After looking at, should we say, the experiences of wealthy people, the reasons for the increases in poverty, and the beginnings of change from Elizabeth, we result in one of the last proper major changes that Elizabeth brings to life in Elizabethan England, which is what's called the Poor Laws. In fact, the first one comes out in 1601, 2 years before she dies, and they are based on those previous discoveries. The work done in York, Ipswich and Norwich helped to formulate and plan out the ideas of how to actually support poor people in England. They knew that the amount where the money was going to come from needed to come from the nobility and gentry. It fit with the great chain of being, and they had access to that large amount of money, so they were being taxed. And they needed to reduce the amount of punishment being used on people, and they needed to look for more societal improvements. And what was revealed was this kind of blend of York, Norwich and Ipswich. And what you need to know is exactly how they work. So I'm going to go through and grab this. This is a thing I did in a lesson with you all. However, I'm going to bring out and just talk in more detail about each point. Straight out about, you already spoke about this, is that wealthy people are now being taxed. But should we say for York, Norwich, Ipswich, that was to fund each own city's, should we say, responses to poverty. But this one was a law for the very first time that taxed wealthy people across the entire country purely with the intention for that money to go to the poorer groups of people in this country. That is the first setup of a welfare system. That is, should we say, the grounding of our NHS in the UK today. That is the grounding of the welfare system, which includes, should we say, unemployment pay and sick pay and maternity pay. All of those come from this idea that the money that is being paid by richer people via taxes gets to support poorer people. And with that, they noticed that in, I think it was Norwich, they were, should we say, identifying different areas or different groups of poor people to have different targeted support. The poor laws established by the government in 1601 identified 3 rather than 2. Particularly the helpless poor, right? These are the people that genuinely have literally nothing. They are on the street and they need basically some sort of help, which is therefore food and shelter. There are places called almshouses where people could visit to specifically have tailored support given back to them so that they could live and recover, and hopefully recover enough to actually get back out into the world of work. There was a group called the able-bodied poor. The word idle was removed because the word idle insinuates basically that you're being lazy, but the able-bodied poor are people who can work, but they are just in an unfortunate situation. And so they would be given experiences of going to work. So they would go and work in spinning factories and go and work in places, should we say, I'm not going to say farms, but I'm going to say other areas. And they would be given food and shelter as payment. So these people would have something to get on with, but also they were not sitting and wallowing in this area that, should we say, Elizabeth at least did not want them to be. And then the last group is the idle poor. These are the ones that, if identified that you seriously were struggling, you'd gone through the system of helpless, you'd gone through the system of able-bodied, and still weren't looking for a job, they would be punished. This was a very small minority, but it would be whipping, sent into the House of Corrections, a prison, and would be forced to work. This group existing does prove that there's some work still to be done in Elizabeth's time. However, these are not purely focused on punishment. All of the laws that Henry, Edward, and even Elizabeth had put forward for years had all been about punishment. This is the first one that changes that. So that's why it gets the, should we say, A-star stamp of approval from historians as a big change for the positive. Now, the problem is that there are millions of people living in England at this time. There's a lot of human beings to organise, and not all of them agree with you properly. So when Elizabeth established these laws, it doesn't mean they worked perfectly straight away. In fact, actually, some areas of the country didn't do the laws at all. The people in charge of those areas decided that they didn't care enough and basically did not actually support poorer people. So it wasn't all poorer people who were being supported this time. And even some of these inconsistencies meant that poorer people just did laps of the country, walking from place to place, begging to begging, because they would keep continually being kicked out or not supported properly because the system wasn't fully effective. But if you can understand the whole process with poorer people in Elizabethan England, you know why they increased, you know what was being done, and now what has been done to make it better, you know the importance of this group of people in Elizabethan England. Other than that, though, I'm going to get moving. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you later.